I'm not the biggest social media person, and here's why. When I first started in business, I found myself scrolling for what felt like minutes, but it soon turned into hours just on social media. I thought that I was educating myself by binging everything digital marketing gurus were posting to acquire their knowledge, which would help me establish a good foundation for my business. But in actuality, I was just wasting time. All of the posts that I viewed were informational yet incomplete. So when it came time for me to actually implement the information, I would get stuck and have to go right back to my social media to scroll to try to figure out the pieces that I was missing. And after a few months of gathering all of this information without anything to show for it, I gave up social media because it just wasn't a good use of my time. It's so easy to waste time on doing things that you think are important, but those things don't really move the needle forward. When instead you could do less, automate, and delegate a lot of those tasks and save so much time. I know that you've been in this situation with not having enough hours in the day to get everything done, and so have I. I am Shanice Miller, and welcome to my podcast, Do Less. Yes, that's right, do less. It used to be cool to work 60 hours a week, but the world has gotten smarter and realized why spend more time to make the same or less money. I help small business owners build systems and processes to help them scale and find more time for themselves and their families. I'm going to provide you the best practices and all the tools and tips to scale your business. Welcome to my show. Today, I'm bringing Neil Tyra on the show to share his experience on how he was stuck in business with managing his time wisely. Neil is an estate planning attorney for regular folks like you and me. He's a musician and the host of the popular podcast, The Law Entrepreneur, which is why I wanted him to share his journey with you. I've been in this situation with not managing my time effectively, and you might be in this exact situation right now. So I wanted Neil to share with all of us who might be in that place to understand there's a path out. Neil, I'm so happy that you're on the show today.
Well, Shanice, I'm thrilled to be here and be a part of the launch of your podcast. I couldn't be happier.
So when was that point for you when you were stuck because of ineffective time management? What problem did you have?
Well, I think time management is a challenge for frankly, most adults.
And it never goes away.
It never goes away. Remove business from the equation and just deal with your family, particularly if you're a parent. Time management with children is a quantum leap above just taking care of yourself. So I can't really pinpoint a particular time when that became an issue for me. But what I can say is that as I started adding more and more things to my plate, aside from just everyday life, and then being a parent, and then deciding to go to law school and starting my own practice, and then adding to that a podcast, and then
Ooh, that's
deciding
a lot of hours in the day already.
deciding I wanted to be a musician. On top of all that, I have 3 full-time jobs, and so
I heard at least like 4 or 5 full-time jobs.
The only way to succeed in that situation is to make effective use of your time and to manage it accordingly. And when you think about it, time is the one absolute. Money is fungible. Resources are fungible. They can ebb and flow, but time is absolute. You only get so much time in the day, which reminds me of, a saying that somebody told me when I first started out in business, before I was an attorney, in business on my own. And they said, owning a business is really easy. You only have to work half a day. The challenge is to figure out which 12 hours that's going to be.
Yeah, when we think about half the day, we're thinking of like half the workday and not the full day.
Yeah.
So that's a good one.
Yeah. So that is the underpinnings of, I think, time management and task management, and then bring that to where we currently are in the world, in large part because of the effects of the pandemic. But now with the virtual workspace being here to stay, it's not going away. Working from home, working virtually from wherever you may be connected. That is something that we're going to deal with going forward. What that does, it adds this extra element of always being available and always having the opportunity to work round the clock.
Mm,
So it adds this extra dimension of necessarily managing your time more properly. Because otherwise, I'll pop into the office here after dinner to just do one quick thing I want to do. And if I don't, manage things, next thing I do, I'm looking up and it's at 11 o'clock and I've been working for, 4 hours.
yes,
And so you
I've
have to
been
get
in
a
that
grip
same
on that.
situation where, you say you're going to
Yeah.
do something really quick and then the time just goes past you. Like one time I know I said I was going to just do one page on my website just to like start it off when I was first starting out. And I was like, oh, this will be quick. I can just get a quick template and format it and everything. It took me all day long. I was working on it for, like you said, that 12 hours, half the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it looked horrible when I finished. And after that,
Yeah.
I said, I need to do less. This formatting sucks. The way that I did the graphics sucks. I just need to hire out. I need to delegate this particular task. And I never did that again because I knew that doing that was ineffective time management. So, what were some things that you weren't really
Yeah.
managing your time well on?
It's a great point. Again, when you are a solo practitioner, um, or take it out of the legal market space, if you are in business for yourself, working for yourself, um, by necessity in the beginning, you do everything. I mean, you are the technical person, you are the operations person, you are the marketing person, you are the customer relations person. Um, so by necessity, you have to do it all when you get started. That's when you have more time than money. So you, by necessity, need to do all those things. But as time goes on, hopefully that equation starts to shift around. And now you have more money, more, funds available to you so that you can now think about, well, what's a better way to get this job done than doing it myself? And what people have done this cost analysis, you know, all the time, but it rings true. And one of the things that to think about is what is your hourly rate? How much do you charge either a client, or how much is your time worth? And you come up with that number. And then you say, okay, would I pay a high school graduate this amount of money per hour to do this task? And if the answer is no, I'm not going to pay them 350 an hour to answer the phone. What are
Mm.
you crazy? Okay. Well, then the answer is you ought not to be answering your own phone,
I think that's a good
because
baseline, a good test to really
yeah,
say, like, is this a job that I should be doing or if I should
yeah,
delegate it out?
yeah. So that's the easiest way to make that cost benefit analysis, is to look at, and even if you say, okay, well, I charge a client 350, but I'm going to set my own personal hourly rate for this calculation purposes. Let's say I say 200 an hour. Again, would I pay somebody $200 an hour to answer the phone? The answer is no. Okay, so delegate. That's and go through everything that you do and make those decisions on a task by task basis. So one of the things that I did when I first started out was I kept track of my activities. You know, just like most good lawyers, you keep track of your billable hour, even though I wasn't billing by the hour, still tracked it to see where am I spending my time and what am I doing during the time that's spent.
Now,
And if
was
you
there
do
any
that for a
specific
few days,
tool or software that you were using to track your time?
I think at that time I might have been using Quicken at that time
Okay.
or QuickBooks. Yeah. Yeah. So the idea was just to keep track of that. And then at the end of the week, print it out and start to group these things, okay, by function. And now you could see where I was spending, say, uh, 6 hours a week on new client consultation and 4 hours a week on updating the billing system or whatever the case may be. You could kind of block those into groups.
Mhm.
And then in looking at that, I said, okay, well, these are the things I would have somebody else do, or I should have somebody else do.
I like
So
how
I
you did it
started to
into
then look,
groups. So you're looking at like,
yeah,
is this administrative work? Is this
yeah,
client work? Are these customer service tasks? I really like how you did
yeah.
that.
So then the next question to ask myself was, um, do I need an individual to do this, or can I rely on a service? So, for instance, answering my phone, do I need to do I need to hire somebody? And so what rate and what have you? I determined at that point, no, I'm going to go with a virtual receptionist.
Hmm.
So it's no secret. I'm totally in the tank for Ruby. Used to be called Call Ruby or Ruby Receptionist. Now they just go by the name Ruby. Um, they are my virtual receptionist of choice. There are others in that space, many that are less expensive than Ruby is, but I've never had a bad experience with Ruby, and they've been phenomenal to me and a huge help to my practice. And so in the beginning, what I used to do is that um, Ruby would answer the call and then call my cell phone, and I could decide whether or not I wanted to take that call. I had the time to take that call. I found that was just as interrupting as if I'd taken the call myself.
I
So
never
now
thought about using a service before and maybe hadn't really come across too many because my first go-to thought is always like, oh, if you need someone to hire the phones, you're going to have to hire someone and you're going to have to,
yeah,
provide them with a cell phone or something like that. How'd you come across the
right.
service?
Yeah, well, I don't know how I came across Ruby. Oh, I do know how I came across Ruby. I went to a conference. Um, I used to go to it every year called Mac Track Legal, put on by Victor Medina. Victor is an estate planning attorney out of upstate New Jersey and a Mac Apple wizard. So he would do this conference every year, Mac Track Legal, that was for attorneys, exclusively for attorneys who use Apple products as the basis of their
Mm.
technology. And again, I'm an Apple guy from way back. And so one of the first ones I went to, um, they would have they only have three sponsors, so not like a big vendor floor be in the back of the room, and the vendors sat through all the presentations as well. And in the back of the room was Ruby Receptionist. That's who they were talking to at the time. So on every break, I was chatting with them, and they were great. And by the time the conference was over, I signed up as a client.
Oh, well, that's
And
nice that you got to kind of try it before, see how their customer service is.
yeah,
Because I know
well,
a lot
just
of,
see how they were. No, again, look, that's I confess I'm a sucker for an attractive woman. They had some really fun people behind their counter,
And you
and
signed right on up.
I was smitten, and I signed right up. But it's been a wonderful experience. I just give you as an example of how great I think Ruby is. So, I do estate planning, and sometimes we're dealing with older clients, and my office is kind of hard to find. If you put my office address in GPS, it actually puts you in the middle of the block, not where the entrance to
Mm.
the building is.
That can be
Sometimes
really
it's a
frustrating, especially for older clients.
yeah, and if your older client, so they would call, and Ruby would pick up, and they say, "I can't find where the office is," and so they would call up the map and ask the client, "Tell me where you are." And okay, turn to your left. Do you see the movie theater? Yes. Okay, walk down to the end of that corner. So they literally walked my clients in the front door remotely. And I
Okay.
just thought that was a level of service that I really wasn't anticipating.
That is because
Uh,
usually if you hire like a VA or somebody to take over those tasks, you would have to give
yeah,
them instructions on how to do that. But that service
yeah,
already knew. So that was one less step that you
yeah,
had to take in order to properly. Were there any
yeah.
onboarding things you had to do with the service to kind of get them up to speed with your
Yeah,
processes?
yeah, we talk about who I am, what I do, when do I want to be interrupted, how do I want them to answer the phone, how much information do I want them to take, um, and so now what I do is I simply have them answer and take a message on every single call. Nothing comes through to my phone,
Mm.
and I get an email message and a text message that says so and so called, and here's the message with the phone number. And recently, I've uh, asked them to also collect the email address of the caller. So then, if I see that the caller is a potential new client for estate planning services, and I have their email, then I put them in my client management system, Clio Grow, and I have templated messages there for new clients. And so I just start the whole process electronically. It pre-frames my clients that that's how we're going to primarily do business together. And I've not had to pick up the phone at all. I've captured all the information that I need to start with. It's just been a great relationship. I can't say enough about Ruby.
Well, that's really, really wonderful. I
Yeah.
know that when you are wearing all the hats, and maybe this was just a me problem, but when wearing all the hats, being in the midst of everything, it feels so overwhelming to try to add on one more task, which is to find some service to hire or find someone to delegate the task to train that person up. How did you go about managing that?
Well, it's interesting because that was my first delegation was at getting a remote receptionist. My second one was getting a remote bookkeeper, and I was doing all my bookkeeping, all the billing, all of that, and so I found a local a bookkeeper. I actually had her on my podcast first, and I was so impressed by her as a guest on my podcast that I became a client. And I've been a client of hers now for the better part of 5 or 6 years. Um, so she gets the login credentials to my QuickBooks account, and I still enter most of the data, but she looks over my shoulder and makes sure that I have everything properly allocated to the correct QuickBooks sub accounts, categories, which I wasn't always doing the right way.
Mm.
And so
I think
I've
that's a good point for what happens when we try to set up our own systems or do our own processes. We're doing it from a certain standpoint, and this is what I see with a lot of my clients, is they're setting up their systems, they're using different software platforms, but they're not making it in the most efficient way. So they're still doing a lot of stuff manually that could be automated, or in your case, adding in certain areas and not putting them in under
oh,
the right category. So it
well,
is
here's
always
the
great, even if we know the platform, to have someone else to have a second opinion or look over what we're doing and give
Yeah.
us that that second set of eyes, a different perspective.
Yeah, well, here's the perspective that I had was I knew that QuickBooks was a very powerful accounting software platform.
And they
And
have
yet
so many functions and features.
they do. And I felt like I wasn't getting the most benefit out of it. I think I was treating it basically as an electronic checkbook. And while I was most concerned making sure my trust account was up to date and balanced, um, it wasn't giving me the information about the health of my practice that I wanted it to.
Mm.
And so when the bookkeeper came in, and later I added a fractional CFO. Um, with those two folks in place, now I have a financial management team that uses that platform to give me all the information I need about the financial health of my practice. And I didn't have the resources to do that in the beginning, so I had to do it by myself. But I didn't know anything about double entry bookkeeping, or I didn't know what were the best set of accounts to have in your chart of accounts in QuickBooks. I certainly had no idea what what a client liability account was. That was like, what does that mean? How do I account for accounts receivable and accounts payable? So these professionals filled that gap for me. And so now pretty much I go in every day, every other day, just to see if the bank statements are coming in to QuickBooks. And then my financial team does all the financial wizardry behind all of that. So I can then push of a button, know my current profit loss for the week, for the month, the quarter, the year. I gain great insight on where my expenditures are, and that level of delegation saves me between the virtual assistant and the online financial support. That was probably 10 to 12 hours a week
Yeah, it
that I'm
really does
saving
save so much
at a
time.
fraction of the cost.
And it helps you manage your time a lot better. So it didn't really seem like you had this issue, but I know the majority of my clients that have issues with time management, it's really rooted in being afraid to give up some of the control. And so
Yeah.
when I do set up some of the systems for clients, I make sure to include very detailed instructions, those detailed checklists, and an area for the client to review the work for quality before it's sent out for those very concerns. So I think that the next time that you're having an issue with time management, ask yourself, how can I do less by delegating some of the tasks? And Neil, if someone wants to learn more about your services and what you do, where they can find you, can you please let them know?
Sure. I mean, you can reach me on a bunch of different platforms. I'm everywhere. I'm on Facebook. I'm on um, LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. But my legal practice, you can reach me through tyralawfirm.com, www.tyralawfirm, all one word, tyralawfirm.com. My email address is Neil Tyra, Neiltyra, at tyralawfirm.com. Or if you're interested in our podcast, go to www.thelawentrepreneur, all one word, thelawentrepreneur.com. Again, the hardest job there is knowing how to spell entrepreneur.
I was going to say the same thing.
But
It's how to spell entrepreneur.
yeah, so the law entrepreneur, and email there is Neil, Neil, at the law entrepreneur. And I'm happy to share everything that I know, and mostly the mistakes that I've made. Because what I found with these kinds of podcasts, people come on and say, "Oh, everything worked out great for you. You did everything right," but I'm having lots of problems. No, no, I made every mistake there was in the book. I can't tell you how much money I wasted on things that didn't matter. So if you want to know what I screwed up and and learn from my mistakes, I'm happy to share with you.
and head on over to the podcast, The Law Entrepreneur. So thank you so much for coming on. It was such a pleasure. Listeners, please be sure to subscribe to the show, leave a rating and a review.